Melissa Denton.
Here.
Carl Hubner.
Here.
Andy Cabarrus.
Here.
Denise Meyer.
Here.
Richard Poor.
Here.
Pinkerton Student School Board Member Eliana Henry.
Here.
Thank you. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent Bob Thompson and CFO Jeff Dowd.
Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh. It's okay, I can just hold it. All right, board members, in your packets, you have a set of meeting minutes from our November 12th regular meeting. So go ahead and look those over.
I'll make a motion to accept the November 12 minutes.
Second. Any questions or discussion? All approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. All right. Melissa, has anyone come forward for public comment?
No, Chairman.
Okay, moving on to school highlights. We'll do HCS with Dr. Cheney.
Good evening. A few highlights from the Central School. It's been a little while since I've been here, so there's a couple that I want to make sure I hit upon. We hosted our first data week of the school year in October. All of our teachers in grades K through 4 were engaged in a review of the beginning of the year academic data. They looked at both iReady and Acadian's data, and as part of the dyslexia law, students who are most at risk were assigned to interventions during their daily What I Need time. Data was also examined for trends this year to make sure we were supporting our Tier 1 instruction. During Fire Safety Week, our kindergarten students had the opportunity to visit the Hampstead Fire Department, which is located right next to our property. They walked right through our backyard and they had a chance to meet firefighters, see the firehouse, and of course, look at the big fire engines. We're super grateful for that partnership. It was a nice first time for us to go down and check out the new firehouse, and we look forward to doing it again. Speaking of fire safety, not only does the Hampstead Fire Department keep us safe, but they also have a wonderful acting group. They came over and provided for us an assembly. The firefighters brought King Koopa and Princess Peach to teach our students about the importance of fire safety. It was a massive hit with our students, and kids just really enjoyed it and learned. On Monday, November 10th, we hosted a Title I breakfast for families of students who participate in our Title I program. This was part of our parental involvement initiative, and families learned about the Title I program. They played math and literacy games with their students, and all children took home copies of games as well as a book to read. Mrs. Michelini, our Title I tutor, did a tremendous job of sharing the benefits of the program and the opportunities available to students. Our grade 4 students took their annual field trip to Concord this year. They had an opportunity to meet their local representatives. They got to see the Senate chambers, and half of our group, because we're so large in that grade level, half of the classes got to meet Governor Ayotte. They've learned about New Hampshire history, and they got to go to the Historical Society up there as well. The Rotary, the Greater Salem Rotary Club, has partnered with us, and they brought all of our third grade students dictionaries in early November. Each student had their very own scholastic dictionary, And the Rotarians shared information not only about their mission, but also about the dictionaries. The ones that they give the students not only provide them with lots of words, but they also have, at the end, appendices that include things like sign language, the world's largest word, facts about each state. So now every third grader knows that the state bird is the purple finch. We hosted a Veterans Day assembly featuring our 4th grade chorus. Students sang patriotic songs, and we viewed a sideshow of the veterans in our school community. It's always impressive every year to see how many veterans are connected to our school community, and we're grateful for their service. Following the Veterans Day assembly, we opened our in-house postal service called the We Deliver. We had somebody from the Hampstead Post Office, Jack Guyette, and Teresa Pruitt from the East Hampstead Post Office. They taught the students about the postal system, and then they administered them the oath of office, so that way they promised to deliver the mail in good faith in our school every week. Mr. Schmidt shared with the students how to write letters and the key components featuring the greeting, the body, and the closing. 3rd and 4th grade students will all have an opportunity to participate in our delivery system this year. With Big Feet, Little Feet, this is a collaboration between HMS and HCS. And this program is back again with Mrs. Ingraham collaborating with Mrs. Gibbons from HMS. And then the 2 classrooms at our school are Mrs. Whitehead's and Mrs. Smith's class from our kindergarten program. The other day, the 7th grade students visited our kindergartners, and we're looking forward to more collaborative opportunities this year. We're hoping to bring the kindergartners up here later on in the year as well to see what the middle school is like. We're very proud of our Central School Grammys, and they were recently recognized for their volunteerism. They received a Spirit of New Hampshire Award, and right now, actually at this moment, we have 5 Grammys assisting preschool, grade 1 and grade 2. We have another one waiting in the wings. The program is just so popular that everybody's chatting about, and we hear from a lot of community members who are looking forward to volunteering in our school. We had a collaboration with Tin Academy recently, where 4 Hampstead students came with the Student Ambassador Group. They visited kindergarten classrooms, read them a story, and spoke about Pinkerton and talked with the students about what they aspire to be when they grow up. Kindergartners all received a Pinkerton Academy t-shirt, coloring page, and a sticker. And then finally, I just wanted to update you on where we were with our memorial progress. Our Make Art with a Kind Heart Memorial is off to a beautiful start. We've hosted 3 events so far to date, and we have additional opportunities for the public to paint in both November and January. December, we're hosting a college paint night, prioritizing students who are away at school who might be home visiting for the holidays to come and participate in the mural. It really is a beautiful expression of the care and commitment of the Hampstead community. And if you haven't seen it yet, I invite you over to come check it out. It's still in progress, but every time we have a new event, I come in that next Monday and I'm overwhelmed by the color and the beauty. Do you have any questions? Excellent, thank you. Oh, just kidding.
Try this. There we go. So quick question on the win time interventions. Could you just talk about kind of what that looks like when we decide that an intervention needs to take place, and then what actually happens?
Sure. So when we look at our data, we are looking for trends in data in places where students need support. We prioritize during that data week. We're really looking at our students who are achieving below grade level or at risk for, in this case, reading failure. We then group them by need and by ability, and we work with them in small groups. We have a reading specialist. We have 3 reading specialists, one that focuses more on the regular ed population, the other 2 focus more on our special education population. We also have a Title I tutor that provides intervention support, and if there are more students than that need intervention, the classroom teachers then begin to provide support. So we look at the needs, divide students up. We might have a teacher that takes a below grade level group made up of students from her colleague's classroom, and we provide support in the classroom so that way she's not interrupted and can provide that continuous support. And we do progress monitor monthly to see how the students are doing.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Board members, any other questions for Dr. Cheney?
Thank you.
Thank you for the update. Check. That one works. All right. Okay, moving on to our Pinkerton update with Ellie Henry, who brought crumble cookies today.
Yes. Okay. Is this working? Okay. Good evening. Here are today's Pinkerton highlights. Volleyball, cheer, and boys and girls cross country won the state championships. Football is heading to the championship this Saturday at Stellos Stadium. So if you're up for some football, you guys should go and support them. Today was the last day of school before the official break. And then once we are back, we are in full swing with the Pinkerton Players production of The Christmas Carol, a few holiday-inspired concerts and shows in the Stockbridge Theater, and winter sports tryouts, and the seasons will begin. The National Honor Society is collecting food for the NH Food Bank, which is a great way to give back to the community. Recently, the Student Council went on an overnight leadership conference at Waterville. 2 speakers were able to instill valuable lessons. Aaron Pompa worked to explain how negative thoughts can drive your mindset and the power behind working on what's in your control while keeping a positive mindset. Work to Be Well talked about the tools that teens can use to work on their physical and emotional wellness. The students who attended also made blankets and toys for pets and animal shelters for a community service project. So plenty of great things are going on at Pinkerton, and all the students are excited to have a break. So this is something that Work to Be Well kind of informed educators and students about. So it's called a check-in. So I don't know if you guys would want to go around quickly and tell me what you guys are feeling like today, and then maybe I can explain a little more about it. So for me, today, I'm probably feeling like a 6.
Yeah, I actually, when I received your slide for approval, I had said, yeah, absolutely, this is awesome, and just so the group is aware, I was definitely feeling like a 6, like a little silly and, excited to be here.
Yes.
So, good pick.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share?
I'm feeling like an 8, like cool as a cucumber.
Perfect. So these check-ins are a simple way to help build a stronger sense of community, improve relationships, and normalize conversations about emotions and mental health. By creating a space for individuals to share their experiences and concerns, check-ins can lead to a more open and trusting environment. This can improve overall well-being, boost morale, and help people feel more connected and supported. So I just wanted to share this because maybe if any of you guys are teachers or educators or anything, maybe you'd want to start your mornings in classes or pep rallies or something with this.
I love it. I could
That's all. Any
definitely see it
questions?
on the sports field as a coach. It can be used in so many different places. So thanks for sharing.
And I'd just like to say, I absolutely love this for a variety of reasons, one of which, and I was talking to our team today, we use this in our schools in things like advisory and then also in morning meeting. And I remember participating in an activity in a classroom with a similar graphic just a couple of weeks ago. And it is so rooted in research around social and emotional learning because you have to interpret emotions and then you have to weigh in on your own emotional state, and it's just fun. So I really appreciate to think that not only are we doing this with our youngest learners, we're also doing it with our high school learners as well. So it's a great, nice addition to our meeting. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ellie. Appreciate the time. All right, moving on to current business. We have the student services presentation with Melissa McDonald.
Hi, good evening. Okay, so I'm excited to be able to share some updates with all of you for the fall. This is a slide that you saw back last year as well, just a reminder of it really taking a village to run the student services team here in the Hampstead School District. I want to make note that Jessica Kate came on board in May with us as one of our administrative assistants, and she has been an absolute rock star at learning all things student services. She did an amazing job supporting us with building our budget and entering things into IV, as well as special ed aid and making corrections in a very quick turnaround, because the Bureau of Special Ed does not give us much time to make our corrections once they send them out. Sue Mackin continues to support us. She's continuing to spend her mornings here at the middle school in the main office, and then after lunch she comes over to the SAU and supports student services in the afternoons, and we found that to be a good balance to her day. We have many professional staff as well as support staff here in our district, and we are excited that we not only have one school psychologist intern this year, but also 2 social worker interns. So Julie Barbic is continuing to support an intern at the central school as well as here at the middle school. And then our 2 school psychologists are supporting an intern and providing her opportunities throughout the entire school year. And finally, our contracted service providers. Again, these are professionals that are supporting our students who have some very unique needs within their IEPs, maybe going out into our out-of-district placements, or supporting our staff if we have an overflow of services needed here within the district. Just a reminder of who we serve under student services. We start and actually, I didn't make this correction, but technically we're starting at 2.5. So if a student is referred to us through early support services, that can be anywhere as of the age of 2.5, up until, in some cases, the age of 22 when they're aging out of special education. We have our integrated preschool program. We're continuing to support students on 504 plans, our school counseling program in both buildings, health services, ESOL, and then our McKinney-Vento for families experiencing homelessness. So these next 2 slides speak to district level student services administration. So that would be my position as director, as well as Francine Flynn as our assistant director. I'm not going to go through every item on this list. It's extremely exhaustive. She and I sat together and tried to brainstorm, and sometimes you don't realize till you put on paper just how much you cover within a department. And there could be some items that we just overlooked in putting on here. So a few things I did want to make note of, as I just mentioned, we're overseeing all students that are on individual education plans or IEPs. We have direct oversight of the budget development as well as that expenditure that happens throughout the year. Another large piece is our state and federal compliance. So we are ensuring that there's accurate data so that when the state is pulling that data, if there are any corrections to be made, they're minor. We're monitoring all 14 indicators that fall under us. There's 18 altogether, but 14 that we're directly involved with monitoring. And then sending reports to the Bureau of Special Ed or the Department of Education. Francine herself has direct oversight of all IEPs and 504 plans at Pinkerton as well as out of district. So that is a position on its own. And this next slide just continues to highlight some of what is captured at our district level. Another piece is extended school year. Although we do have a coordinator that helps with the day-to-day operation and getting things up and running and being on site during the summer, there's the components of staffing of all the students that attend, of making sure transportation is up and running as smoothly as possible, and then just working very closely and collaboratively with the coordinator. And Child Find is on there. I'll speak to that a little bit later because we do have some exciting developments coming along with Child Find in our community. So I do apologize, this graph came out a little bit smaller than I had intended, but I do like to include this every time I have a presentation. just so that we're always talking about our numbers of students on IEPs and where we fall as a percentage in our district versus where the state level percentage of students on IEPs is. So this just outlines by grade level. You can see that we do have some bubble grades, and bubble grades just meaning our IEP count is a little bit higher than some of the others. It seems to fall in an every other year basis right now. I'm not quite sure why. I have not put any data to that trend, but that just seems to be how it's coming about. So we, as a district for students ages 3 through 22 are at 23% students on IEPs to our total population versus the state right now is at 20%. So we are still higher than the state average. It's not unusual for school districts to be higher, but it is still work that we in Hampstead need to look into. And I know that we've had a lot of those conversations over these past few meetings. I wanted to speak a little bit about our fiscal year spending for 24-25. I was not here when that budget was built and proposed. However, I was here last year when we were working through spending the money and putting our funds where they belonged. So the amount budgeted going into last school year, as you can see up there, was $5,855,292. What was actually spent by the end of that fiscal year was $5,239,044. So the three areas that are highlighted below are where we find that there's more fluctuation in our costs based on needs. So the total out-of-district tuition by the end of our fiscal year last year was $2,097,568. Our contracted services total last school year was $1,201,062, and our specialized transportation total, which includes our busing as well as any mileage reimbursement, was $1,054,160. So that just kind of puts some actual numbers to our last fiscal year. And then in looking at our out-of-districts, I took 2 samples that were students that we have out-of-district placed. In being mindful of confidentiality, I did not give you any information about which schools these students are placed at. However, the top example is looking at a placement where all IEP services are included within that tuition amount. So whether that is specially designed instruction for academics, whether that's speech pathology, whether that's occupational therapy, paraprofessional support, that's all included in that tuition number of $113,628. Add on top of that, this particular student requires specialized transportation, and in addition to specialized transportation, requires a bus monitor. A bus monitor could be for any number of factors. It could be for ensuring an added layer of safety, could be for intense medical needs, could be for behavioral support. So that particular placement's total for last fiscal year was $189,110. So when we were looking at a couple of slides ago, the out-of-district numbers right now are at 19. So that just kind of gives an idea of where we're at with this basic number when we're looking at the number of students that we have out-of-district. This sample number 2 speaks more so to a student placed in a school where that tuition line is just for their tuition, and then related services are billed above and beyond that. So the tuition for this particular placement is $62,836. Then the related services the child receives within their IEP, whether that be speech, counseling, academic support, a total of $17,170. In this case, the student is also accessing a CTE program that is within a reasonable vicinity of their programming because the school that they're at is not offering a particular course that they require credit in. So we do have an agreement with that school district to access the CTE program for $2,230. You can see specialized transportation. That school is a little bit further, so that transportation amount is a little higher than the one up above, $28,389. So that particular out-of-district placement is a total of $110,625. That just gives a couple of different examples. So when we're looking at out-of-district placements, that's a very serious discussion. That's not something that we would ever spring on a family. We would be having a lot of meetings building up to whether we as a school district are able to program and plan for a student, and have we exhausted all options that we have within our walls. Something that had been started before I came and has now been brought to fruition since is our RISE program at Hampstead Central School. So this is an effort in building the capacity within our school district, providing exceptional professional development to our staff and support staff within the RISE program, and being able to look at keeping some of our students within district for maybe longer than what would have typically been in years past. So we do have 2 dedicated case managers. Our BCBA at Central School partners with these case managers endless hours. We have RBTs as well as paraprofessionals. And what we did that was unique going into this school year is that they offered a 3-day training in August. The first day was the case managers with the either RBTs or paraprofessionals only, looking at those IEPs, going through student programming, and just really getting down and dirty into the details of what their day-to-day time with their students would look like. Days 2 and 3, the students actually came. They did a very shortened couple of hours. They walked the students through an abbreviated day, showed them around the building where their new classrooms were going to be, spent some time on the playground, engaging in social opportunities, and having the adults that they'll be partnered with really some time with them before the school year began. It was extremely successful, and we were fortunate to be able to pay them through our IDEA grant for all of their planning and time over the course of those 3 days. Our curriculum for RISE program is really tailored and individualized to these students. These students, in most cases, are on an extremely modified program, so we're really meeting them where they're at, and meeting regularly to see if there's any other resources that we can access to bring in to help these students access their curriculum. They're providing life skills opportunities within the classroom, so we, through permission of Jeff Mackey, were able to purchase some equipment for them so that they can try out basic recipes, so that they can learn about how to build and follow a schedule and checklists, and being able to just work on some more skills than they would be in other placements. And then structured social groups. So social groups they're structured anyway, but it's just a little bit different in this situation because we're really trying to promote those social engagements and interactions rather than parallel play, but have those opportunities to work together in small groups and building from there so that they're more successful in the classroom setting. So speaking for ongoing work for this school year, so we know that students, as they grow through the grade levels, they're going to end up here at the middle school. So I've already started some preliminary conversations with our staff here and our building administration so that we can help support the students who have been successful in RISE at Central transition up here with that same success, looking at space, program approval, and anything else that falls under that. In the area of literacy, Mrs. Tomaselli will be speaking in a little bit about the Bridging the Gap and the 603 grant that we just found out about. So we had mentioned that we had applied for it, and we just found out some exciting information. So I won't steal from her, but that will be a great way of leading us into more structured monitoring of our literacy within our classrooms. We're always looking at our preschool program. We had a full evaluation of our preschool that we did last spring, and We were able to implement a few changes this year. One of our 2 classrooms is a multi-age, so one classroom continues to have 3-year-olds in the morning, 4-year-olds in the afternoon. The other one has a mix of 3s and 4s in the morning and a mix of 3s and 4s in the afternoon. So we're collecting some data and see how that's working. Child Find. So we are obligated to hold at least one Child Find event per school year. And so we are partnering with a couple of other local school districts to hold some information sessions for parents to tell them a little bit more about developmentally what to expect of their child as they're aging and approaching grade level. We'll be holding 2 sessions at Get On Board right here in town in January. So our first event is going to be on January 7th in the evening. And then our second event is going to be January 23rd in the morning, trying to accommodate families. However, Becky Gagne, being as generous as she is, will have crafting events available for anybody who does need to bring their child with them so that she can help keep the children busy while the parents are able to help listen to some of us and learn more about Child Find. And then our continued collaboration with both MTSS A and B. I was fortunate enough to be able to join in with some of our peers here at the MTSS B training up in Concord. And we do have regular meetings on our calendar to continue making sure that our Tier 1 as well as Tier 2 and 3 are moving in the right direction in both buildings. And our PAGS process I spoke about last time. We have a phone call, Francine and I have a phone call on next Thursday with our assigned person from the state just to kind of give us a general overview. We'll be meeting in January to kick everything off, and my spring presentation will hopefully be just a summary of how the process has gone and where we're headed. Any questions?
First of all, I'll say, great job. This is exactly what I think we wanted to see as a board. It's very thorough. I really appreciate it, and you got it to us 24 hours beforehand, so kudos to that.
Thank you.
And I did have some questions here. So for ESY planning and coordination, is that a year-round effort, or is there a sudden ramp up in responsibility towards the end of the school year as you approach that?
The ramp up honestly starts in the spring. So by April, before April vacation, we really need to have a solid sense as to how many students are eligible for extended school year services, so that way we can plan for accurate staffing and classroom availability at the schools. That is when our ESY coordinator and I started meeting. I think we started around March just to kind of the planning process, but April until the last day of school in June was really intense, getting parent information, getting information out to parents, getting numbers, or getting attendance as far as vacations, or coordinating with the rec program for their schedule, making sure that students that attend both can be accounted for in both locations. So it was a heavy lift around April and on.
And then a question around the numbers, the totals in each grade level for students that qualify for special ed. And maybe this is a Francine question because I'm asking about 12th grade, but I noticed in 12th grade there's only 7 kids, and I don't know if I'm reading too much into the data. Is this a small number just due to the cohort, or are there students that were once receiving services who now no longer require those services, so we see a drop off? And I wonder if you can speak to any sort of trend.
It is a little bit of both, but I scheduled a phone call with her tomorrow morning, so I will get a better answer for you. I had that on my list and then completely forgot to ask her. But yeah, that number stood out to me as well.
specific answer for 12th grade, but I can speak generally. Generally speaking, so when a child with a disability, not all children with disabilities, going on an IEP, you need to make annual meaningful progress. The idea is that you are not on an IEP like in perpetuity. So the idea of aging out of an IEP prior to graduation is that's a real thing. The other piece too is colleges and universities have gotten really, really good at working with students with disabilities and providing them the necessary accommodations to be successful. That being said, an actual individualized education plan, an IEP, the protections of IDEA are not there the way they are in K through 12 schools. And so what does happen is, and again, I'm speaking generally, is that students transition from IEPs often to 504s, because a 504 accommodation plan does carry over into post-secondary. So there's lots of national data to support what I'm saying. And then of course, Melissa will get you like the soup to nuts information about the specific cohort of students.
That's great. That's helpful. For the out-of-district samples, I think this is really great that you provided this, and it's really telling about just the dollar values that go into each of these things. And if you take over $2 million total for out-of-district tuition, just tuition alone, and divide it by those 19 students, that's $106,000 roughly per student just in tuition for those out-of-district placements. And we say it a lot, but I think it's important anytime we talk about out-of-district placements, that is required by federal law through IDEA, correct? Mm-hmm. So it's not something optional. It's not something that we just love doing.
A lot of thought and time goes into that, in all honesty. It's truly a team effort. I mean, between touring schools to make sure we're earning the right, even at the educational disabilities that are approved for the schools. So we have all of these educational disabilities, 14 of them in the state of New Hampshire, but not every school is approved for all of them. It might be approved for a good portion, but if they don't have the current needs to take in a certain educational disability, they may say this is not the right time, and then you're off looking another place. So it's best to exhaust everything you can in district, but obviously not at risk of our staff either.
And then last thing for me, and then I will be quiet and let everyone else talk. So for the mixed age preschool kind of experiment that we're doing, we did the preschool study last year. Mm-hmm. Before the end of the year, I would love to have you come back and report out on the data that you're taking on how that mixed age preschool experiment went, and the data that you captured, and what our conclusions are.
Absolutely.
All right, that's all I have.
I just wanted to say good job.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I think you left one thing out, though. Don't you also oversee Foster and McKinney-Vento?
With the help of Julie Barbic, yes.
Yeah. So
we
that's
do. Under
another
student services.
thing that is under the student services umbrella that you didn't
Yes.
give your department credit for. So
Okay.
there's actually more that you have to do. So
Thank you for that reminder.
But just to echo what Andy said, and I know I say this all the time, that we don't have a choice with out-of-district placements. I mean, you could plan the, most tight budget in the world, and we could have a kid move in tomorrow. Mm-hmm. That completely blows the budget. So the fact that you put together a budget that is under what we spent last year, I think, it's solid. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, any other questions or discussion for Melissa?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Okay, moving on to the 2026-27 proposed district budget with Bob Thompson.
All right, I'm going to turn things over to CFO Dowd. I will just sort of recap for Actually, it looks like we're Summer Reading Intervention Program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for pointing that out. I appreciate that.
I'm going to move this agenda closer to my eyeballs so I can
You're just
see it.
excited to hear about the budget, but
Yep.
wait until you hear about the summer literacy program at
Excellent.
HCS.
Sorry, Dr.
Yeah.
Koenig. My mistake.
Not to build it up too much.
Not a
Jane.
problem. I'll include
Yeah.
budget in my report as well,
Excellent.
so. So thank you. Tonight I'm going to speak a little bit about a draft of a summer literacy program that we are in the process of putting together. Just so that you have a little history, we have had a summer literacy program since I've been here. It's always been a tutoring model where students drop in for about 45 minutes, receive some reading support, and off they go. They typically came 2 days a week, like I said, for about 45 minutes to an hour. And so as we've looked through data and looked at our student needs, we've really talked about revamping this literacy program to make it a valuable part of our multi-tiered systems of support and make sure that we're really addressing summer learning loss and involving families with our elementary students. We know that early intervention makes a big difference, and so we're looking for more ways to capitalize on that. All right, the Hampstead School District Summer Reading Intervention Program, we're really designing it to provide targeted literacy support for students who will be entering grades K through 4 this next school year, so the 26-27 school year. And the program will prioritize students currently performing below grade level. And so why? There's that term summer slide or learning loss, and students can lose 1 to 3 months of reading progress over the summer without continued structured practice. There's research that says it's about an average of 2 months worth of skills that are lost every summer, and they sort of attribute that loss to students viewing learning or reading as a thing you do at school only and not necessarily something that you carry over into your home lives. We also want to make sure that we provide experiences to help maintain and hopefully accelerate growth, so that way we're not spending those fall months remediating the regression that students may be experiencing. Additional summer literacy and stronger literacy is tied to better school attendance and greater academic confidence. And so we also want to increase our family engagement. It's important to do that because our students are spending more time at home than they are at school, especially over those summer months. There's some pretty solid research to indicate that students who read for at least 20 minutes a day, and that could be reading themselves or somebody reading to them, that they experience significant benefits. They're exposed to millions more words a year, which leads to better vocabulary, stronger literacy skills, and higher academic achievement. Reading with students also builds empathy, confidence, and when reading with your parents, it builds really strong family relationships. Family engagement also creates consistent reinforcement at home, which will only increase the impact of what students are learning during their programming sessions. And then we also want to focus on skill development. We really want to make sure that we are providing targeted instruction for those emerging readers to help address any gaps in phonics, comprehension, and foundational skills before those gaps widen in the fall. And through that skills development, students will continue to develop that confidence and see themselves as readers, and that identity of being a reader is really very important. And so that will occur when they have opportunities to choose books, set goals, and celebrate their progress. Providing opportunities for students to practice those skills that they're still developing while also introducing them to new skills will only provide opportunities to close that gap, not widen it. This year, we actually tested a little bit of the skills development with our kindergarten students. We did a concept that we called flooding, where we paired every kindergarten classroom with either a reading specialist or an interventionist, and they went into the class every day for 20 to 30 minutes, worked with a variety of students on some of those skills that we know early readers need, phonemic awareness and phonics skills specifically. We actually saw a significant increase in our students' beginning of year reading scores, with 80% of students meeting the benchmark on the Acadians. So That's right where we want to be. We want 80% of those students to be able to learn at the Tier 1 level, and this flooding got them all to that level playing field where they can continue to make growth. And that was just for 20 to 30 minutes a day for 6 weeks. So imagine what we might be able to do with this. So here's the data from our school. So what you can see here on the left is kindergarten to first grade cohorts. There are 2 cohorts. There's the kindergarten spring 25 to the fall of 2025, and you can see that the reading data does go down. Thanks, Nicole. And then you can see the spring of 24 to the fall of 24. Again, we're seeing a significant decrease in student reading data. Grades 1 to 2 actually look pretty solid, either maintaining or a little bit of growth. Same thing with second and third and fourth over the last year, but the year prior to that, we continue to see a drop in student learning. And this is on the specific Acadience test, and we're going to look at iReady data here in just a second. This is our iReady data. This one's more concerning. You can see that in the spring of 2025, for example, about 80%, that's okay, of our students left at what iReady terms the Tier 1 level. So they're making progress at the general classroom level. But when they came back this fall, we only had about 22% that were actually meeting the Tier 1 level. Across the whole building this year, in the spring, we had 74% of students leave at that Tier 1 level. And in our fall testing, we're at 34% of students actually in that Tier 1 level right now, indicating that about 66% of our students are going to need some level of intervention to meet grade level standards. So, as we've talked about summer programming, we really want to make sure that we're maximizing participation from as many students and families at risk as possible. And so we've thought about what are some of those barriers to participating. And that includes things like family schedules, student interest in participation, parents' understanding of literacy support to carry over into home, community partnerships, and access to technology tools. And so we're aiming to solve some of that. So the first thing that we're considering here is our student selection. We're really going to support students that are in K through 4, identified as yellow or red on the Spring iReady Reading Diagnostic and the Acadience Diagnostic. We're going to look at both of those metrics. They measure slightly different facets of literacy, but when we combine them, we get a picture of a reader. We're going to make sure that the students with the most significant gaps in foundational literacy skills have priority enrollment and opportunities. And we're really going to make an effort to connect with families, since family engagement is such an important part of this, and making sure that parents or guardians receive personal invitations with student-specific data, really emphasizing the importance of participation. And our goal is to have that done no later than late April. We want to make sure that families are thinking about their summers with this opportunity in mind if their student is a candidate. As far as the format, so this is going to be, we're proposing a 4-week intervention program. And as I mentioned, family schedules are sometimes a barrier to students participating. So we're looking at offering options where students can attend either 1, 2, 3, or 4 weeks of intervention. Each week, those will be daily 2-hour sessions in person. And those sessions are going to be multi-age. It'll be students exiting K1 in one group, students exiting grades 2 and 3 in another group, which can lead to opportunities for students to support each other. It can also lead for opportunities if a 3rd grader needs more support, they could be reading with some of the 2nd graders, and they're all just there together. And we're also going to provide additional opportunities for carryover with things like Lexia Access and MyPath Access, which are both online adaptive programs where students can receive some asynchronous support. As far as curriculum and materials, we'll continue to use evidence-based materials aligned with the science of reading. We use a program called UFly, and then Lexia are 2 programs that we utilize at this time. We will also be sure to incorporate decodable text and high-interest leveled readers. Hooking students on a topic they're interested in is key to keeping that momentum going and that identity of a reader. We'll also continue to integrate digital platforms such as Lexia and iReady, and then reinforce that at-home practice. And then finally, we're going to make sure that we're focusing on family involvement. The incorporation of family involvement opportunities is so key to promote learning. I mentioned in my update a few minutes ago that we hosted a Title I breakfast, and the families that came were excited to learn how to play games and support their students and to understand where their students were on the different learning trajectories. And they all took home games that were both below, at, and above their students' level so they could, see their different needs and their different opportunities. We're also looking to build some homeschool kits to send home that will have additional literacy-based activities for families to participate in. I promised you a budget, so here it is. So we are looking at hiring a reading specialist or the equivalent. They'd be working about 64 hours, as you can see here. We'd also like to have a reading tutor or a paraeducator to support the program. This will allow the teacher or reading specialist to work with small groups of students while the paraeducator is extending that learning and continuing that learning in small groups as well. We do have a budget for some curriculum planning where this is new. We're looking to work with the teachers and the personnel that it will be a part of this program to continue to improve it. We're looking for some funding for instructional resources, consumable materials. I mentioned the family literacy toolkits. And then looking at some participation incentives. I mentioned that student interest is sometimes a barrier, so we're looking at some participation incentives for attendance and engagement, and that's going to look a lot like more things to support literacy development, like high interest books. And I think that's what I have to share at this point. What questions do you have so far? And again, we're still in development.
First, I'll say, apparently, according to the data, the summer slump is real, very, very real. So, some questions around that daily 2-hour session approach. Is that 5 days a week?
I believe we budgeted for 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Great. And I know you mentioned attendance incentive, basically providing some sort of reward or something. I think for whatever it's worth, my 2 cents is that's critical in terms of gaining the interest and getting people. And then for the hiring of the reading specialist and the reading tutor, maybe this is a question for Bob, maybe it's for you, but do we envision those being internal candidates likely, or
Yes.
people from the outside?
Yeah, so again, we have highly qualified reading specialists. We have amazing reading specialists.
We have several of them.
Yeah, we do. We have an appropriate amount. I am pretty confident that, I know Tara Lynn has, vetted a lot of these ideas through them. I think when we really finalize this, because again, you notice this is a draft because we do want your input. I think there's definitely reading specialists that would be in district would be very excited to be part of something as extraordinary as what it seems to be emerging. And again, I just want to be clear about the rate too. Like the detailed budget, we would anticipate like the hourly rate that's set there is the rate of an off-step person with a master's plus 30, right? So we want to budget and prepare for somebody with experience. We could have somebody with less experience, and the rate would be adjusted. Sure. So that number that you see on there is there's a range. Yep. For budgeting purposes. We put the higher number. The support staff number is the number, the $27 an hour. That is the rate. That's not dependent upon years of experience.
Well, in my opinion, just as a board member, again, the data doesn't lie. And so this really sounds like to me, at least on the surface, an extremely worthy cause to be investing in for our students and for our district. That's just my opinion.
One is, looks great. One is a question, I think I asked maybe last time, if the Hampstead Public Library was involved at all. Are they sort of dovetailing or supporting some of this?
Yes, so they have a new-ish children's librarian who has supported some of our literacy initiatives before, and we're excited to partner with them again. I mentioned community partnerships. I forgot to mention them explicitly, but they are some people that we want to partner with. And they also have a summer program that we'd be looking to collaborate with and support and, you know, send families their way as well.
Yeah, they do a great job with that. The other is more a comment about barriers to entry, so trying to engage families. The one thing I will say, so I have a child that has IEP, full disclosure, and issues with reading, and has tried to participate in some of that. Just as a parent, as people are planning for their summers, they tend to plan early on, which you probably know this in regards to where they're going for camps and all that. I would just suggest, if you can, pull up the time frame on when things are available so that people can factor that in versus having to go back and say, hey, I've spent, you know, $3,000, $4,000 on a camp. My kid won't be able to make it, just so they can plan that in early versus being notified at April, because sometimes they can't make those changes or the trade-offs. If it becomes a burden in that way, may be less likely to participate. So just a suggestion.
No, that's great feedback. And, you know, we can use some of our mid-year data that we're going to collect in January to inform some of these. That can be a little bit predictive. You know, what we may see throughout the year, we can take a metric of where students began, where they are now midway through the year, and start even to work with some of those families and put it on their radar. Yeah, thank you.
that might
We'd
help.
also discussed, you know, there's a much larger process document that we've been working on, and we worked back from a time, this is again where it's good to get the feedback, on a timeline of, because that was feedback we considered about, like, sometimes we let people know a little too late. Working on a timeline of the passage of the budget, right? So in theory, like, this plan is great, but if our budget doesn't pass, it's a new item, and the board would need to decide by default whether or not to keep this. And so the timeline would look as such of, like, we vote, you know, we have voting day in early March, and then we can communicate to families about the program and the dates associated with it shortly thereafter. And, you know, we could accelerate the timeline, but there's a caution in that of advertising a program, a new program in a budget that has not passed is, you know, something, you know, you'd want to consider, so.
And I think the key word is advertise here. If we are going to invest in this and budget for it, and it is a great program, I know we don't have a social media coordinator or anything like that, but it's up to our district to publicize it effectively. So that means posting it to the community pages, getting the word out there to gain enrollment to justify the money that we're spending. Okay.
And
Yeah.
the data is concerning.
Agreed.
So I'm very happy to see this thoughtfully laid out. I like that you're offering, because I know working with extended school years, sometimes we tell families if you could just commit to a week,
Right.
that'd be great. So I think that's a great option for people. Will you be progress monitoring students over the summer?
Yes, so we'll progress monitor at the beginning of their session and end of their session. So for some of the students, that might just be a week. And we may not have significant growth or change during that week. But again, we can also look at this cohort of students that participate on their fall data and see if there's been a marked change.
Okay. And then I'm assuming you're going to use like Acadians during the summer then?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have a cap at how many students you could have? I'm just wondering how big the groups are going to be.
That's a good question. We're playing around with that. My vision is sort of 10 to 15 students per session, which is why we'd want the 2 adults, because we really want to make sure that targeted instruction can be small group instruction, but we want to try to give as much opportunity to students as possible. So there'd be 2 sessions of 2 hours each a day, so I'm hoping we could target between 20 and 30 students a day.
Right. My challenge to you is by this time next year, again, I'd love to see the data just to see, to measure the effectiveness of the program or not. And I'm willing to bet we're going to see some progress there.
And I would just like to add too that, this idea for, this robust program came after the data week at HCS. And I know I've shared with the board before, but like, just how incredibly thoughtful our educators are. Like, they get in our grades get into a room with, support professionals, related service providers, and they look at the data and they, really take to heart, like in June, like we're high-fiving each other about the progress that kiddos have made in reading. And then you come back in September and you see the summer slide and it is deflating. And they circle the wagons and they look at every kid in when they group them and which staff are best served to work with those kids. And they do the best job they can. And there are amazing results, but that summer slide, we can't ignore it. And I think this is in response to it. And I think we've had a lot of conversations as a leadership team about literacy. Tara Lynn has said to me repeatedly this idea that I think the single most important thing that we can do as a school district is to have our students become proficient readers. It is like, it's the moral imperative. We talk about that. Like, when we are able to make our struggling readers proficient, like a world of opportunity and equity opens to them, and that's what this program stands to do. So,
great work to you and your team. Thank you. All right. Now, without further ado, we will talk about the 2026.
All right, excellent.
Budget.
All right, so the last few months have been dedicated to our budget development process, and at the last meeting we brought forward a budget number that as a percentage was around 4%, which all things being fair and equal is not a terrible number. But we did indicate to the board that we're still waiting on some more actual numbers to come in. The big one that was out there was Pinkerton tuition. We got some favorable news on that, and I'll leave that to CFO Dowd to explain. There was a sort of challenge laid down by the board, or at least a hypothetical, and that was, I think it was Andy who said, our seniors in town are getting a cost of living adjustment under Social Security of around 2.8 or 2.9%. What would it look like if we were to try to get there? And so what we do is we present to you an adjusted budget number, the one that we are at, with no further action by the board, and then the number that aligns with the cost of living increase for Social Security, should the board wish to indulge in that conversation. So I'll hand it over to Jeff, who can provide more detail about the numbers you have in front of you.
Thank you, Bob. So we're looking at draft 2. What does draft 2 consist of? Well, we presented draft 1 of the total budget on November 12th, and we're presenting draft 2 tonight. Draft 2 really consists of a true-up of our existing expenses, and we've gone through and reviewed our needs, and we'll continue to do so before the budget is finalized to make sure that we're capturing all of those needs. But we've done a true-up of expenses. We've made our expenses accurate based on developing information, new information we received from Pinkerton. We originally budgeted 8% for Pinkerton. The budget that was presented on November 12th was an increase of 6%, and we did get great news from Pinkerton that their regular tuition rate is a 3.97% increase, which is somehow very exciting these days. So we've been able to make that adjustment. Special programming that Pinkerton offers, their increases are going from like 1.1% to 15.04%, and so those have been priced in accordingly. And I also have some additional budget reductions based on discussions that we've had previously, and wanted to see what those numbers look like, and so we'll go there. So the first, for true-ups, we had an increase in pricing for some shredding here at the middle school, which was $300. It doesn't seem like a lot. I need to track it because it'll drive me nuts if I don't. Pinkerton adjustment from that 6% we had budgeted at in draft 1 to 3.9%. 3.97% increase, is actually a reduction of 129,687. And the adjustment to special programs at Pinkerton is 87,945 favorable, for a total of 217,332 favorable.
What is special programming at Pinkerton? What do we mean by that?
So special programming at Pinkerton consists of a number of different programs. We pay a base tuition for our students who go to Pinkerton, and on top of that, some of them will participate in resource. I don't know if it's still called a resource room, but it's a resource program. That's the program that went up 1.1%. We have a passes program, which is more intensive. That's at 29,736 for next year, and the ACT program, which is 38,160. For the specifics on it, there's one additional program that we have there that's a collaboration with another outside,
Yeah, the NEC program, the NECC program.
which we have not received final pricing on. I believe it's probably because it's implicated with two different entities that we need to get them.
Yeah, it's essentially considered not a district placement.
Okay.
And if you'd like more detail, I'm sure Rob could tell you about.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd say, it was not necessarily reflected in the budget numbers because it's so variable. Like, we also have students that may participate in the HiSET program. They have an adult learning center. Like, there are multiple, what you see is like the base tuition, but there can be additional add-ons for students that need additional support.
Sorry to throw you off.
No worries. It's a great question, and it's a little bit of a loaded question because although we wish that Pinkerton would maybe have some enhanced offerings in that area, they do have quite a few different offerings as it is, so it's good to discuss. So what's the impact of the 217,332 adjustment? So we went from our November 12th budget of 39,926,283 to today's budget of 39,708,952. Comparing it to the 25-26 budget of 38,501,625, we're looking at an increase of 1,207,327, which is an increase of 3.14%. That's where we stand right now. We have some other potential reductions. These were, I believe, discussed loosely with the board, and so I wanted to bring those to your attention as to what the actual amounts are. Bob, I don't know if you want to discuss or.
Yeah, sure. So, and I think, these have been part of ongoing discussions that we have been having, not only this year, but also last year as well. And so the first one is, we currently have a special ed coordinator position at the central school that is filled. And, but that is funded through IDEA. So our federal grant for special education allows for us to be able to hire staff, either our own employees or contracted staff. And there's oftentimes a limitation as to how long you can keep something in the grant. And honestly, that really is, there is not always a set amount of time. It really is subject to review. But the goal is, again, with IDEA grants, you want to supplement but not supplant, meaning it's really for unanticipated expenses. So it is prudent for us to move that position over into the operating budget. It is in the operating budget, but I was asked to come up with a budget that reflected the cost of living increase for Social Security, and in doing that, that would be an area as a new position, one that is funded elsewhere, that I would suggest that the board remove if we're committed to getting to that 2.8 number. There's also 2 para-educator positions. They're part-time positions in special ed. In the 5 years that I have been here, or 4.5 years I've been here, we've never filled. They've always been vacant. We also have some adjustments in our enrollment for students who require some services, which result in us needing less special ed paraeducator support. I get weary about leaning into that too much because tomorrow, one student moves away today and tomorrow 2 more move in. And you always want to make sure that you're sufficiently staffed But in this case, we're talking about two positions that we have not been able to fill because they're part-time. And I will say, and I think the board is aware of this, if we were to eliminate these positions, and the budget is approved in March, April, a new student moves in that would require that, we would add a position. It would just be that we would have to use funds that we didn't anticipate using to fill it. So removing these two positions does not mean that we are not going to satisfy future obligations to provide IEP services or for paraeducators. So this 147,227 helps to get us to that, that number. Are there other areas we could look at? We can, but I also said to the board, we were very conservative in the development of this budget. And you've looked at the expense budget, there's really not a whole lot to cut. And I think if you want to achieve that number, I think this would be my recommendation of how we would proceed in doing so.
So what is the impact if we were to take that 147,227 out? Drum roll, please. There it is. So we started with the draft one at 39,926. We took out 217,000 to arrive at today's 39,708,952 budget. Take out the 147,227, and that leaves us with the draft two that includes those potential reductions of 39,561,725, which compared to the current year budget is an increase of $1,060,100, or a 2.75% increase.
Board members, I'm curious on your thoughts on potentially removing these items from the budget.
I have thoughts. Yeah, so I know filling para roles is never easy, right? But I also know when you give up positions, it's also really hard to get them back. So if we're sitting on two positions that have been like 5 years, we haven't been able to fill them. I think we can safely cut one of them, but keeping one in the back pocket is probably smart. I don't want to overlook the need for a math specialist at the elementary school, so I'd really like to continue that conversation. But I guess as a school administrator myself, I struggle with the number of special ed administrators that we have in a district that's this small. However, I understand that the principals and the assistant principals, them being in special education meetings all the time rather than being in classrooms and concentrating on teaching and learning is also a challenge. So I don't want to shift those responsibilities back onto the building administrators. So I guess how do we, if we were to do away with that position, how do we ensure that they are still able to get into classrooms and make sure that teaching and learning and all of the other things are still happening and they're not bogged down in meetings?
Yeah, I wish I had a good answer for you. And I pride myself usually on having an answer for you, and I don't have a good one on this. I think I would say is we would look to continue to fund it in IDEA, but that would be the goal, right? But there's the uncertainty of, will the activity get approved? You can only keep it in there for so long. And then also, we've had this conversation before, IDEA is for unanticipated expenses. And if we were to have some really extraordinary unanticipated expense, we can't commit to anything in IDEA until the activity is written and approved. And so we have to operate off of the premise of it is our intention to continue to fund the activity, but I can't guarantee that, which means if you cut it from the operating budget, it may not be there next year at all. And the support is definitely needed in the building. And I think that, what we do here at the middle school, and it's less than ideal, is we need special education support. So we contract with a former director who is highly regarded to come in for 20 hours a week and provide LEA services. That really just means that they are the person who's sort of running or sitting in on the special education meetings. You know, we can certainly do that at the central school, but, you know, it will require additional time. Contracted services is expensive. And the other thing too, we heard Melissa talk about, like, 1 in 4 children at the central school have a disability. They're identified as, having a disability requiring IEP support. That is a lot. It really is a lot. And you add on top of it the child find obligation. We are identifying most of our students with disabilities in the elementary school grade level. So there is a need. If the position goes away, we can't in good faith just throw all of the responsibilities back on our 2 building administrators.
Right.
Like, we would need to find some support if we can't fund it through IDEA to bring in a contracted service or some other type of model. But we have to support the administrators, because it is not feasible for them to do it all.
What are we currently spending contracted service just for that activity here at the middle school?
So it is new. So I in the year just started, but I can tell you in previous years, it can be about the same amount of money as paying an administrator. And so you can say, well, then let's just contract. But again, we can run into issues with the Department of Labor. There's often value added for having your own employee, but from a financial standpoint, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen are another. Did I answer your question, Dr. Poor?
Yes.
You have that
no,
look like, you didn't answer.
I don't know. Part of me thinks that I think having somebody who can step in and do that is important. I wonder if there could be a world in which we keep this position, but the position is shared between the 2 schools. I know that will be an extra level of coordination, making sure that, but I mean, there's some staff that's overlapped across the schools anyway.
Yeah, and what you're describing would shift the model. And again, I can't fully commit to this, but really to have a shared position, which could have value and benefit to it, would result in that person as a special education coordinator really being LEA. So scaling back a lot of the other, there's supervision and evaluation, there is responding to student behavior. There are the duties of the special ed coordinator as they currently stand at the central school. And if the board wanted us to explore a model where it was split, the focus would really be on, like, your job is to attend the meetings, support students and families. And again, there's something to be said about that as well. And in fact, I think the middle school, would be intrigued or interested in that approach of shared shared coordinator.
Okay, I'll shut up now.
Jeff, what's the approximate impact on the tax rate for every $100,000 change? I know you can't just come up with it off the top of your head, but
estimate about a nickel.
Personally, Rich, I really appreciate your perspective, particularly from an administrator point of view. I'll say I'm very motivated by this 2.5% number here. That was my challenge, and this does get us there. And I don't want to ever put the district in a bad situation around special ed. But I also, like you said, these 2 positions, at least with these paras, have not been able to be filled for not just a year, but a good amount of years. There were several attempts to try to fill this position, and it hasn't been. So, whether we like it or not, we haven't been able to fill that responsibility, even when there was potential need for that, right?
Yeah, and we've talked about, and I welcome the board's feedback on this. Okay, let's take the 2 positions, and they're a little bit more than part-time, than 20 hours. I think they're 5.5.
5.5.
5.5, right? So.
No benefit.
no benefits, and here's the issue. So we could collapse them into one single position, and now we're on the hook for a $45,000-ish family plan. Like, the cost of insurance, I mean, and I'm preaching to the choir here, but the cost of insurance far exceeds the actual cost of the wages that we pay somebody. And so, that was the thinking was, because previously, 4 years ago, we did that. We took all of our part-time people and we combined them into full-time positions for anyone who wanted it in special ed. I want to be clear about that, in special ed. And, so to me, I'm comfortable with the offering up the 2 part-time because I have, in meeting with Melissa, some assurances that, we have students that are moving out that will put some relief on the need that we have. That in some ways could exceed the 2 positions that we're cutting. It could be a case where if we wanted to, and I don't want to, we could look even further, but I don't suggest that we do that because we need to anticipate future need.
And again, for the special ed coordinator position, that's nearly $100,000 that I feel like could go back into IDEA for whatever we decide to use that for, or we, do some sort of reevaluation of what we want that to look like, whether that's contracted services. Again, especially where we had the default budget last year, I am just very motivated by this 0.75% and feel like it's something that has the potential to actually pass this year if we make these changes. And again, I don't want to put the district in a hard spot, but I also don't feel like you would come to us and present these as potential options for removal if you felt like it was going to do damage in this area.
Bob's saying we can get rid of these 3 positions, but we're going to have to come up with a plan for at least one of them.
Agreed.
So there's still going to be some sort of an impact, whether we have to pay someone $40,000 a year contracted services to do the LEA, or we say, okay, here's $100,000. This person's our full-time employee. They're the LEA for both schools, and now we don't have anyone in contracted services.
So, the approach to that, though, is getting to a number that would make the budget pass, and then again, reevaluating the need and seeing what we can do with this money moving forward.
So I think the thing with the LEA is if we're just LEAing, that means the person is walking in the meeting not knowing the kids. If you have a central school LEA, you have somebody that knows the kids, has worked with the kids, and has a familiarity. Now, that being said, we need to have an impact if this position works, right? So we don't know what that impact is, but if we keep the position, then we should be seeing students needing less service over time because we have the impact of the administrator in the building helping out.
And if we're being honest, we have seen...
It's too early for this position.
I don't know that this position is a function of that, to be honest. I think that the special educator is the person who's in the box, right? Like, they're the ones working with the students. They know the students. At least in my experience, the LEA is largely an administrator that's really just taking notes and making sure everything is done properly and procedurally. I mean, it's not the person who's with the kid day to day.
He's not just, right now, he is not just an LEA, right? You have a building of 400 kids. You have about...
I do just want to clarify.
I don't want to talk about the person.
We're talking about a position.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You have a building of 400 kids, you have 100 kids that are special ed, you have somebody that works with the 8 special educators that work with those 100 kids as somebody, as a fallback and somebody to work with. If they have expertise, they should be able to help those kids. It's mentorship and experience to help them, empower them, as well as doing the LEAing. We're talking about pulling that mentorship and that experience away.
But where's the equity for the middle school? So the middle school doesn't, we have to give both of our schools the same.
You do not have to. Where is the best money being spent? If you put it in the elementary school, you get early interventions that will pay off, and then later on, you'll then have more resources for the middle school later on. If we have less students on IEPs, or students need less services in the central school, the net benefit is going to be for the students as a whole. Again, it's always early intervention. You put your money in the elementary school, it will benefit the district in the long run. But I don't know.
I don't agree with you at all, because you
I
look at
would
students
like to
nationwide and it
interrupt you
drops in
both.
middle school.
Can I know I asked at a previous meeting, what are this positions like daily? If we could just review what this person actually does. Their responsibilities and kind of like their daily.
Yeah, so, Mrs. McDonald and Dr. Cheney did work on a job description that really the primary responsibilities are LEA responsibilities. Reading and reviewing IEPs, being a member of the administrative team, some responsibilities for supervision of staff. And originally we had indicated it would be preschool through grade 4, but we have a director of student services who has been essentially a principal of school. And so we shifted those responsibilities to Melissa. She gladly took those on with her experience. So, oversight with IEPs, compliance, working with the district leadership team, working with the building level team, and other responsibilities that are commensurate with a special education coordinator.
I guess I'm just wondering if that person who previously oversaw the special educators at the central, who previously supervised them.
So the responsibility has been shared between the building administrators and the director of student services. And we've done a data analysis on supervision and evaluation numbers. It's in like an apples and oranges game. And at the central school, based upon data that I've done for regionally, without the special education coordinator or the director of student services being involved in supervision and evaluation, the evaluation caseload's probably a poor word, but list or load for each of the administrators is very high. I think it was over 20, and when the average was around 15. So it's a lot.
Would it feasibly, if this position was to be split more of an LEA between 2 buildings?
Yeah, and I think what I would say, and again,
What would
the
be
board
missing?
can certainly, because not only are you approving the budget, but you approve positions. So I would recommend that the focus be on whether or not to fund the position, and that leads to a future conversation of what are the responsibilities of that position and where do they lie in terms of the split between the central school and the middle school. Like, here we are in the thick of things with budget, and we need to start to wrap that up. So it's almost like a 2-part conversation. One, are we going to fund it? And if we do, what does the structure of that look like? That would just be my recommendation as a way to not get bogged down. And again, just like a little bit of clarification on the role of an LEA and the fundamental role of an LEA, that local education agent is an agent to expend. Prior to this concept of LEA, in the original IDEA, there really isn't language around an LEA. It was added because you would have an IEP team that would be talking about programming for kids, and they would say, well, I can't make that decision. The principal has to decide. superintendent needs to decide, and the IDA became very clear of like, no, somebody needs to be at that meeting who has the authority to spend money on behalf of the district without having to leave the meeting and get permission. That's the role of an LEA. It's a very important role. There are occasions where the LEA doesn't facilitate the meeting. They just attend the meeting. Sometimes they take notes, sometimes they don't. The role can be in addition to other responsibilities, but at the core, the district needs to have at the table someone who is highly qualified and skilled at being an agent to expend on behalf of the school district.
I've been in a number, I don't know what your district looks like, but Rich, where you are, but do you have special ed coordinators in your schools? Any of them?
They're different. Yeah, I mean, so I think I've seen it
Because I
done.
see it often where I have worked, so I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it
think
done a
it's-
couple of different ways. Most places that I've been, there's been a special ed coordinator who essentially runs the meeting, signs on behalf of the district for the IEP, sends all the paperwork, but, you know, the special ed teacher and team is obviously the ones who are providing all the data and doing a lot of the talking at the meeting, but that LEA or ETC or whatever you want to call them, they're running the meeting and representing the school district. So it's ranged, like, you know, one district I was in, I mean, it's 9,000 kids and, you know, 150, 200 kids per school on IEPs with one person. District that I'm in now, it's 2,500 kids and there's 2 of those people that oversee 400 and some odd kids on IEPs. Yeah, they're on the teacher's salary, these ones, actually. Yeah, I'm certainly not opposed to the position. I just think we need to talk about what it is.
I said, I think we need the position, but we need a further discussion later about what the position really entails. Maybe looking at that.
And again, I would say too that, you know, ultimately, you know, you're voting on the bottom number, but with a commitment from us of like, this is how we've allocated the money, this is how we're going to spend it. You have the authority to go back after. The reading specialist is a great example. You know, you had the conversation, you added the reading specialist position, and we reduced contracted services by a number in excess of what it required for the position. You can do the same thing. You can add the position and then upon the passage of the budget, have that discussion about, you know, whether or not we want to adjust the responsibilities to include the middle school as well, or whether or not you want to fund it, because the money will be there and you could use it to have the conversation with the math specialist. The only thing I would say is it's probably better to have that conversation earlier than later, because again, we're talking about positions that have people in them.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that's appropriate.
And I'm happy to, you know, just sort of outline a little bit of like what options we have like right now. This is really 3 options. So one is tonight you could approve the $39,708,000 number. That is the budget as we've adjusted it without taking anything out. And that represents the 3.14 increase. The other option 2, so to speak, is to approve the $39,561,000 number. That's the 2.75. Or the third option is to approve the budget at the next meeting. That is, I think, December 9th. So you do have time. What I would recommend is that, you know, we do have, if we're going to wait until December 9th, that we have the substantive conversation, because we really need to make a decision on December 9th. We could defer to the meeting on the 23rd, but if something comes up, there's not enough time before the public hearing for us to really make any other adjustments. And again, if you decide that you want to defer and wait till December 9th, Jeff, it's likely to be, to come back with some other adjusted numbers. Like there could be some unanticipated costs for next year that arise. Like that number could go up or down if we wait until December 9th. But that's really the three options. I mean, the fourth option is you can choose whatever number you want, right? And we can figure out how to get you to that number. But you know, based upon where we're at, I see that like you have three options in front of you for your consideration.
I think for me, when we look at that position for this year, it's between does it go in the budget or do we want it in IDEA? We also do have to consider the fact that if we're not going to commit to this, we're likely to not be able to get a candidate for it. Right now, we're in November, there's 4 open special ed coordinator positions in the state, and 2 of them are in the local area. So like that has to be a consideration as well. Like there's not a lot of people out there that want to do this job, and you don't get a lot of work with the kids, and that's usually what people work for. So that has to be a consideration as well. I do not know where I am at this point either. I think I agree with Bob. I think we should have the decision at the next meeting, but I'd like more time to consider between now and the next meeting which one of these 2 numbers we decide on.
That's fair, because I would agree. It doesn't sound like.
I think Denise wanted to say something.
I was going to say the same thing, essentially, but also, and this may come across as a different type of challenge, with removing positions, my stance is, look, if we have something on the books for 5 years it's never filled, it's probably time for those things to go, right? Carrying it for that long is not great. With the other ones, since we are seeing some trends with kids that need the support, we need the people, we need that. Is there something else in the budget, maybe several something else's, that would equate that equivalent of that position that could be removed? So that's a different challenge, and I know what it's like coming through a budget. I'm in the throes of doing that in my professional world right now. So that would be a thought to try to find it elsewhere. And the other is, I think, factoring in, so I hear what Andy's saying about the percentage looking better, right, from someone who's at the end of the day paying their bills. Would like an understanding of what that looked like impact-wise, because if we're talking smaller dollars for something like that, like, is the trade-off really gonna make a big difference, whether or not? I think we're almost at a point where any increase is going to not be viewed as a positive. So whether it's 2%, 3%, I don't want to do damage to the operations of the district and the children.
Well, did we go over the default budget numbers yet? Okay. Yeah, if you can come up with what it is, what the difference between these 2 budgets is per thousand, and then say what the impact would be on a $300,000 home and a $600,000 home, I think that would be helpful for the next meeting. But also, if you can go over the default. Oh, do you have it?
Will default budget be next?
Yeah.
And then, so you're looking for what if we had a $100,000 change? Or
So between the proposed, like we have the 2 different options, which is the 3.14% increase and the 2.75% increase, because I think that's kind of where we're thinking. Okay.
I can get that.
Yeah, if you can find the difference, what it would look like, and then if you can just go over the default budget and what that looks like.
And, you know, it's not one or, I sort of framed it as one or the other. It really is. I mean, you could say, keep the special educator coordinator in there, take out one parent, which I think was suggested. Like, there's any sort. In addition, Denise, like you said, I have no problem coming back to the next meeting with, well, I don't say no problem. It makes it sound like it's easy. I can come back with hypothetically $57,000 worth of cuts. I hesitate to do that because we did a lot of expense cutting last year to come in with a favorable number. We cut, I think, originally $400,000, and then we cut $700,000. And then this year, you know, we sort of said to our principals, like, we don't want to impact student learning, but we need to be tight. So coming with the 57, we can do it. It won't be easy, but I can give you that data. To me, the easy one was like, I get 2 positions sitting on the table. They sit there all the time. We end up giving the money back to the taxpayers every year in our, you know, unexpended funds. So, but I can certainly do that, even as a matter of just the exercise of seeing. Because it's going to be things like, well, I won't say this, in the past it's been things like the stage. Like every year, how can we cut expenses? And so we end up cutting the stage. I have a commitment to we're going to buy that stage. But it will be other items, whether it's furniture replacement, supplies for classrooms, things that do have an impact. But the exercise itself at least demonstrates to you what the impact would be. So I can do that for you.
Yeah, I just think for selling it with the communications plan and stuff like that, when we say this is the budget increase and it's going to cost you, if you have a $300,000 house, $200, this is what you get for your $200 for the year. And if it's I think you sell that way, which is we have the ability to increase helping the students that need it the most, or we have the ability to do this or that. I think that here's the sacrifice for what I think will be an effective communication strategy.
So what I'm hearing is we have a little homework to do, and then the goal would be to come back for this December 9th meeting and put the stake in the ground on the operating budget. So.
Can we go over the default budget though?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we have I'll call it a preliminary default budget, and it's preliminary because really we're still in the process of working through the operating budget at the moment, and ironically under some more recent legislation, changes that you make in the operating budget can be reflected or it will be reflected in the default budget. So keep it where it is. The fiscal year voted budget 25-26 is $38,234,315. Looking at additions of about $1,365,204, and that would give us a default budget of $39,599,519. If we compare that to the current draft 2 proposed budget, we're looking at $109,433 more in our proposed operating budget as it stands right now. And you can see what the changes are as part of that $1,365,000. You have the HESPA and HEA collective bargaining agreements that were voted on back in March. We have a Pinkerton increase of $414,000, special transportation of $379,000, health insurance increase of $244,000. We're removing $150,000 for a one-time capital reserve warrant article, also from just this past March, and a workers' comp increase of almost $12,000.
So if we went to the default budget, that would be more than the 2.75. If we talked about getting the 2.75, that's a bigger cut than even if we had default. Is that correct? If I'm looking here, default is 100,000 or 109,000 less than what we're doing now.
The default is 109,000 less. However, if, for example, you opted to remove the 2 paraeducator positions, those would drop off the operating budget and they would drop off the default budget.
Okay.
Rich has a question.
If we go to default budget and the same thing happens with the para educators, we settle contract with them, that passes at the vote, but then we go to default budget, we're still obligated to pay that difference too, right?
Not sure I'm following the question.
So we haven't budgeted for an increase for the para educators in the current budget, correct?
Oh, correct. Yes.
So
yep.
if our budget fails and we go to a default budget, but that contract passes, we're still obligated to pay that.
Absolutely. Yep.
So
yeah, and it's important, and it comes up often. The idea is the default calculation. That's the number. We will take 109. If the budget were not to pass, we have to go back and recalculate it minus 109. We don't necessarily take out the new items. The board really decides what's the priority. And essentially we almost engage in the same process we are now, which is to say okay, we got to cut $109,000. Where do you want it to go? So we can still fund new priorities. And in fact, I can tell you, if we went to default, would not ever recommend cutting the program that Carolyn presented tonight. We're going to fund that even though it's new, right? You know, so just keeping that in mind, that we get another chance at recalculating the budget after the March vote.
Yeah, what I was just wanted to clarify is I know the default budget takes into account contractual increases of contracts that are already settled, but it doesn't necessarily reflect things that have not been settled. So I think that's important that taxpayers understand that when they go to the ballot box.
Yeah, and that's actually what happened this year. We had the default operating,
Right.
the default budget pass, and we had 2 collective bargaining agreements pass as well. So we take that default budget and we take our CBAs, and that's what our budget is.
Okay. Board members, any other questions or discussion around the budget? Okay. Moving on to the 2026 draft warrant review and discussion. So in your packets, you should see some sample warrants. Bob, what do we think the best course of action is here? Should I read each?
Yeah, well, and I also think having these 2 documents side by side, I think is helpful, because there's really 2 parts. So, like, you know, a lot of our time is consumed by the development and the approval of the proposed operating budget. And the board will at some point approve the budget and make it your own. That's like one stop on our, like, several stops of the setting the warrant article. So there are additional warrant articles. So what we do is, based upon lots of the conversations that we've had this year about capital reserve, leach field, special education trust, we put all of it into what we think, based upon what we've heard you say, the warrant might look like. Now, it wouldn't be prudent. You could, discuss this and approve this tonight. We're working backwards from, the public hearing. It's good for you to take a glance at it, discuss it. If need be, give us some direction and say, hey, no, that's not what we were thinking. We would come back next week. Ideally, not at the next meeting. Ideally, the next meeting would be the meeting that you would say, this is the warrant. There's 2 parts to that, which leads to the second document that Melissa Post has put to, which is a very nice guide. There's really 2 parts to setting the warrant. One is approving each individual article. You need to approve the operating budget, right? Not ready tonight, but will be for next week. So not only do you approve it, but you also have to advance it to the warrant. There's a 2-part process. You approve it, and then you put it on the warrant. So that second document, this one, is probably the one that you might want to focus on, because it has the check boxes of approve and then advance to warrant. In theory tonight, so we're holding off on the operating budget. In theory tonight, if the board feels like, look, we have agreement on certain articles, you can approve and advance them tonight. It doesn't have to be all done at once. So it's shaping up, if you look at the number of articles, that, tonight you could go through and you do a quick review and hold off until December 9th. You can do a quick review and then say, look, we know we want to approve and advance this, and you could do it tonight. So it probably is good to go through each one of them quickly, and then just engage in the conversation if we're on the mark.
All right. So for Article 1, that's the election of officers to choose the following school district officers. We have 2 school board member. Oh.
Yeah, and that's where it can be confusing, because, that won't be on, that doesn't require your approval.
Okay.
Right.
So do we think I should go through, you'd go through this one?
Which one's that?
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
So let's go through that one. So we talked about we're not ready to make a motion for the operating budget or the default budget. As far as the HAS collective bargaining agreement, we are still in negotiations, so we're not ready for that one correct?
Yep, we are not ready.
We're not ready to move that forward. For the authorization for a special meeting on cost items, I think, willing to say, at least I think, we're all in agreement that we'd want to advance that one. It seems pretty obvious.
Not yet.
So at this point, can I make a motion to advance?
Can we check in with Mr. Dowd? Do you have?
You would only need to advance that if and when we have a collective bargaining agreement for HASC, because that ties directly to HASC.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Yep, thank you.
I don't
That
want to
makes
jinx
sense.
anything, so.
Yeah.
So we'll leave that one alone. That is dependent on the HASC collective bargaining agreement.
And just to be clear about that, just for the public, you know, if for some reason the collective bargaining agreement is not approved by the voters, we get another shot at it. Going back and continuing to negotiate if necessary, and then having a special meeting. So that's really like a kind of a safeguard.
Now, for the capital reserve fund, I don't think we have really talked about contributing towards the capital reserve fund at all yet. And I don't know if there are any thoughts on putting money towards that this year.
So the capital reserve fund and then the leach field capital reserve fund. For the leach field, are we asking, we are going to raise a certain amount and then spend it? Or is it, we are going to try to raise it for the capital reserve and then the leach field one is to spend it? Does that make sense?
So with the leach field, again, you have to use, as you'll see here, the words raise and appropriate, even though we are essentially expending from the capital reserve. So there's no new taxes. It doesn't have any future tax impact.
Yeah.
Basically, it's exactly what we do with the Cove classroom.
Okay.
We put it on there, raise and expend, $1.5-ish million to be taken out of the capital reserve. In fact, we met today, Melissa and Jeff and I, to steal the language from that to make sure that we're in accordance with the law. I will recommend that you consider putting the capital reserve number to match, if not exceed, the actual cost of the leach field. That way, because again, as I understand it, the spirit of the capital reserve was to be able to build an addition for a future need. And so we're shifting courses, which is allowed under the provisions of the capital reserve. But to preserve the money that's in there, I would say match what we're spending on the leach field as a minimum. The board can do whatever they want. You can put $1 in there or nothing. But that would be my recommendation.
What was the ballpark estimate for the leach field? Like 267 is the one that's rattling around my brain, but I could be wrong. Okay, 231. Yeah, so I definitely agree that whatever we ask for in the leach field is what we raise in the capital reserve.
So Rich is saying, he's throwing a number out there. 250,000 sounds to me as well like a good number to fund the capital reserve with, knowing that we're spending roughly that on the leach field.
So give a little inflation proofing.
Yeah.
And I like what you just said, Carl. So the money does gain interest. That is obviously Mr. Dowd's department. I would assume that the interest probably doesn't match inflation. And then also you have your sort of CPI inflation, and then you have your construction cost inflation, which are two different things. So just something to consider in terms of, if you want that money to retain its value, its dollar value, not only putting in the leach field, but given some consideration for inflation, whether CPI or construction inflation. And I can give you the actual number.
So Jeff, what happens if, so say we do 250 or 275, right? and then the leach field is cheaper than that number, where does that money go back to the taxpayers, or does that go back in the capital reserve?
We never withdraw it from the capital reserve.
It goes back in the capital reserve.
No, it doesn't come out.
It doesn't come out.
Oh, it just doesn't, oh, it doesn't. Yeah, okay. And yeah, have we gotten an actual quote for it, or has it been a rough quote?
231's a pretty, I won't say an absolutely well-developed, like we're going to do it next week, but there are a number of components that have had to be put together, and so it's a pretty accurate number.
Does anyone disagree with putting $250,000 towards capital reserve?
And I can say with the number of the project being 231,000, if you were to put 250,000, set the number at 250,000, it's about 8% to account for inflation, and that seems pretty generous. Just looking up real quick, construction analytics for 2024 it indicated that construction inflation was running around 4.5% to 5%.
Okay.
So that's actually pretty generous.
So,
Yeah,
I will make a motion to approve $250,000 to be placed in the capital reserve fund, and a motion to advance a capital reserve fund warrant article to the 2026 school district warrant in the amount of $250,000 available for transfer on July 1st, 2026.
any further questions or discussion? All approved.
I will also make a motion to approve and advance a capital reserve warrant article to the 2026 school district warrant to establish funds for a HMS leach field project as presented, and a motion to appropriate $250,000 for HMS leach field project capital reserve fund warrant article.
Any questions or discussion? All approved.
Yeah. So, Carl, just so I'm clear, because I didn't quite hear it. So we're going to have the capital reserve fund contribution set at, we'll appropriate up to $250,000.
Yep.
Traditionally, we've done that after the $150,000 of unencumbered.
I will motion to amend my previous motion to, let me read this.
We'll appropriate $250,000 after the first $150,000 of surplus.
To motion for the $250,000 after the first $150,000 is returned to the taxpayer. Melissa, how are we doing? Is that?
I had a question. I wasn't sure if the board needed to amend the motion or if the minute reflects Mr. Dowd's clarification and the board is in agreement with
150,000. Yep. It's been the same for the
I
past
feel like
10
we can
years,
just
so.
vote on it quickly and then make sure. There you go. No worries. No, I saw your face for a second. So I did make the motion.
And Rich seconded. Okay. All approved?
There we go.
All right. Moving on to the creation of the Special Education Reserve Fund. So there was some discussion around the creation of the fund and whether to fund it or what we were going to fund it with. And you can see it's broken out into kind of two options here. One is the creation of the fund. If we want to create it and then put $1 in it, then I would recommend just having it as a single warrant if we are looking to establish the fund and put $250,000 in it or some large amount, then we are better off splitting it out into 2 warrant articles.
I am for the creation of it. I don't know if this is the year. I feel like this is going to be confusing, and we're going to have to spend time on it in the communications plan, versus I think we're going to try to do a new communications plan and a new way of rolling this out. I feel like if it's effective this year, then we could put it on next year.
You don't think at least establishing it? No?
I think it.
I'd like to establish it something with $1. That's my view, I guess.
I am thinking of the 3 people that when I went to register my car, talked to me about the different stuff that's going on and some of the misinformation and misunderstanding. And I feel like they're going to look at it and they're going to say something shady is going on here. Why is it $1?
Well, that's what our communication plan needs to do.
I feel like we lost a budget last year. I feel like the communication plan should be on the passing the budget in the lead field. And then if we're doing this, we're adding extra effort and there's more information that people have to go through.
If it doesn't get approved this year, can we not put it on next year?
Well, I'm worried that we're going to lose more than just that by putting it on. That they're going to look at this and be like, what is going on with this?
And they won't do that next year?
Where it's simpler next year because we don't have the leach field and the capital reserve together on it. This is a new thing we're doing with the leach field. I don't know.
Go ahead.
I'm torn, honestly, because I feel like we know we need it long term.
Do we?
I think out-of-district placements and special ed in general is an extremely large cost to the district. And for unanticipated expenses, long-term, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, it makes sense to have a cushion to be able to pull from.
I think you have to keep in mind too that the federal funds are possibly in flux.
Which we don't have the answer to yet. I mean, my position
No.
on this is I would not be in favor of it. I think we already have a rather large budget, and I do agree with Carl that I think it's going to confuse even the best communication plan. I think it's going to look like we're squirreling money away to the average taxpayer, and that's what they're going to focus on, and it's going to get... So until we get some more clarity on some of what is transpiring macro level, I would hold off on this to next year to see what transpires.
And I can get behind
See
that,
that.
of trying to be conservative and constructive with our messaging. And if the job is to educate the taxpayers on the budget, then let's make the creation of these warrants really simple and not overdo it. It's like Carl said, by confusing them or creating potential confusion, that the impact might be greater on these other warrants that we really need to pass.
What do you think, Dr. Poor?
Sorry. I think everyone needs to wake up. I think it's needed. But I am very hesitant to do it now. And honestly, it was just thinking back to Missy when you and I were elected to this illustrious board, and there were a number of people who voted for the things that were on the front of the page, but the number of people who actually voted for us was a significantly smaller number. So I know sometimes when I get a really long ballot, I'm like,
And it will be longer this year,
Mhm.
the extra information as well.
Absolutely.
and we know we can't put a lot of money into it because we got to fix the leach field. So, I mean, unless we say, hey, you know what, we're putting 100 grand in it. If we say we can do that, I'm all for putting it on. But if we can't,
That's two warrants then, and then.
Right.
You're.
yeah. So I mean, if we can't fund it significantly this year, then I wouldn't bother. But we should prioritize it next year if we don't have to do another leach field, which I'm sure we will at some point.
And I think the first priority is getting the budget passed. I don't want to have.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't want to have 2 years in a row that we lose budget, because that is a really rough thing, so.
Yeah, and we can't have a catastrophic septic failure because the cost to pump out on a weekly basis is not great. Going through that right now. Not at all.
Okay, so we will hold off on that. And then the last one is the general acceptance of reports. So I will make a motion to advance an article to school district warrant to accept reports of agents, auditors, and committees as written in the 2025 annual report. I will
Second that?
Any questions or discussion? All approved. Thank you. Absolutely.
To eliminate the special education reserve fund warrant article from this draft warrant, or would the board like to see this again on December 9th?
Yes, we're all in agreement on eliminating that.
Eliminating
Do you
it,
need a motion from
okay.
us, or?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Moving on, just a brief update on the HAS tentative agreement. So we are still in negotiations with HAS. They have gone well, and there's still a lot of back and forth and successful discussion happening. So we're hopeful in the next few weeks to continue that, to eventually get to an agreement that both meets the needs of their group and meets the financial needs and priorities of the district. All right, board members, in your packets, you have a set of policies for first read. We have 5 policies today. JFAB is the education of children and foster care. There isn't currently a recommended policy on the Hampstead School District books to reflect the changes to the McKinney-Vento Act. And number 2 is AA, the school district legal status. This is recommended to update language to align with the district's adoption of RSA 4013, requiring a 3/5 minimum ballot vote for any bond articles. BBAB, roles and duties of the board chairperson, adopted in 2011. There's a suggested reaffirmation of that policy. Number 4 is EBB, school safety program, and that was adopted in 2023. It's been revised to include language from the new rule, New Hampshire Code Admin Rules Ed 306.04B2, relative definitions on school property. And then lastly, EBBB, accident reports. It was last revised in 2018, and it's suggested to adopt substantive revisions to reflect Department of Labor provisions to clarify whether any person extended beyond employees to reflect requirements of RSA 277, that all employers report workplace accidents involving death or serious injury. So go ahead and look those over for first read.
On the school district legal status, so bond issues have gone from 60% vote to 3/5 the ballot vote. Isn't that the same thing? Okay, so they changed the law, and we just have to change the law because it says 3/5 in the law, not 60%. Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah, and again, this is really, yeah, like affirming policies and similar with the roles and the duties of the chairperson. Like there was the board had indicated that they would really like to see policies be no more than 3 years old, which is a very ambitious goal, which I appreciate. And really, this is about affirming it. So when we ask the board to reaffirm a policy, we go to the model policy and see are there any substantive changes. And it sometimes is a word, phrase, and so that's reflected in that change, really because the New Hampshire School Boards Association recommends that we add that.
There's also now a space between RSA 4013 versus there was not, so that's.
Hey, look,
It's
very
good-
thorough. And
It's good to know in the state of New Hampshire that we still have some bureaucracy.
I would encourage you to reach out to your NHSBA rep, Dr. Hubner.
I want you to talk to the staff council about.
Talk to yourself.
Is that space between the
Yeah.
RSA 40, is that really important? All right, Bob, can you just go over just the broad strokes, the education of children in foster care, how that might affect the district?
Yeah, so we're very fortunate. It was said earlier that our school social worker, Julie Barbick, school district social worker, Julie Barbick, is actually the McKinney-Vento liaison for the entire South Central region. That's a huge job and a volunteer effort because of her knowledge of McKinney-Vento. And essentially what they've done is they've carved out foster care from McKinney-Vento. So essentially, and Julie is way more skilled at understanding this, and we had a ton of questions for her at policy, and we peppered her, and she answered everyone perfectly. Typically, students in foster care, we've used the same criteria for their enrollment as we do with McKinney-Vento, but there should be a carve-out because you can be in foster care. In fact, it's quite typical that you're in foster care, you're not homeless, right? In fact, foster care by definition is the state, generally speaking, is your guardian. And so Julie pushed for this. You know, there are several different enrollment residency policies that we have that address different groups of people. And so this was one that we didn't have on the books. The language in here is really identical, largely identical to McKinney-Vento, and any deviation is not substantive.
And then Jeff is our resident HR person. On the accident reports thing, it talks about a training. All staff shall receive annual training relative to accident and accident reporting protocols. Is that like another Primex training or another is that like an online module, or how would they do that training?
No. It could be, but what we envision for the district is to simply, as part of our annual training, go through, this is what to report when, is the form of where to go. So I've been working with the principals to get some time to make sure that we can.
So it's not going to be 20 minutes a year of slip, trips and falls, like some other things?
This could be fun, yeah.
All right. I know how teachers love to do that every single year.
All right. I will make a motion to move these 5 policies to second reading. Any further questions or discussion? All approved. All right, moving on to board comments and correspondence. Board members, anything to share? Okay. Yep. Moving on to the consent agenda, the personnel report.
So I don't have any items for the personnel report, but we can move right into the superintendent report. And I want to start with some incredibly exciting news, and I'm going to let Nicole Tomaselli, our Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, share that news because her and her team can be credited with this exciting news.
I'm excited.
Is that on? Thanks, Teddy. So the team that filled this out was extensive. I'm not going to list everyone because I'm a little bit afraid I might forget someone, but it's essentially our ELA vertical leadership team. So our reading specialists, we have several related service providers, many case managers. Melissa, Tara Lynn, and myself filled out the Bridging the Gap and the 603. It's a new grant that they're offering. This is, I shouldn't say completely new, we've been selected to participate in the third cohort. So we just got notification Friday afternoon, and I told the team on Sunday that we were selected, so this is very exciting. I did reach out to the project manager today to ask if it was okay to share with the school board what this means to be selected. So this grant is from the USDA. It's part of the Office of Special Education Programs. The goal of this grant is to improve reading proficiency for all students K through 4, but especially those students who have disabilities. It's a cohort model, so we will be engaging with other school districts who are selected for the next 8 months for what they're calling the readiness phase, which is then followed by 2 years of implementation. So we'll begin in January 2026 and then work with, they have said that this round of funding will have up to 5 schools in cohort 3. So that's great. I love being part of cohorts. I feel like it offers us chances to do site visits. It's good professional collaboration and professional networking. You know, our principals will be able to connect with other principals, the reading specialists, everyone will be able to team up. So I think it's a great way to do professional development. This particular grant is going to afford us just better opportunities for structured literacy, most importantly for coaching for our school-based leaders, and then really to ensure effective implementation of these methods for like long-term reading success. So it's wonderful. One of the things that we have noted with this team when we applied, we had to do a SWOT analysis, and one of the things that's a concern for our teachers and everyone on the committee is that the state offered letters training for free for the past few years, and we have many teachers who have taken advantage of that or started the process, letters for classroom teachers, and then even elementary or early childhood letters version. It's quite a robust undertaking for teachers, so we have several that have stopped midway and haven't completed it, and the state has cut off funding for that. So we wanted to put that into our budget to figure out how are we going to continue this letters work to make sure they complete the coursework. But it's a very expensive thing to do internally, to home grow. So this grant will, in addition to the $35,000 in the first year and the $30,000 award in the second year, they're promising additional funds above and beyond that to cover the cost of any letters training for K through 4 staff that need it. And that is one of our expectations, is that the entire staff becomes letters trained, as well as our administrative staff. Many of us have already participated in it, but anyone who hasn't will, in the next 3 years, be able to do that. So it's pretty great.
That's excellent.
Yay. Any questions?
No, we're grateful for the grant and grateful to all of you for applying for those grants. I know it's a big undertaking and an effort to even apply for the grant in and of itself. So
Yep.
And
the team, the team came together, I think it was last year, and we applied for a different grant, literacy grant, and we didn't get it. And it's a little, it's a little devastating when you don't get it and you put in the hours and you get all the data and you have meetings and people kind of proofread and pour their ideas out. So I was really pleased that this one paid off, and this is a better grant actually. So if they're rotating and taking turns, we did good. But this one was actually competitive, so it feels good to win something that's competitive as well, which Hampstead doesn't always qualify for, some of the more competitive grants. But we did a great job, so I'm very proud of the team.
That's great. Thanks, Nicole.
Yep.
And it was interesting, Nicole said it's a competitive grant. There was a lot of buzz amongst all the school districts and something. Who got it? Who got it? Of course Hampstead got it, right? So like just by that nature, that this isn't just money in the hand to everybody. They're very selective, and it's really often comes down to the quality of the submission of the grant, which includes a ton of data. So it is a testament to Nicole and her team. Also, we received a $50 donation to the Pay It Forward. It doesn't require board approval, but just to put you on notice, from a Marilyn Moran. So a check showed up with her name and address on it, and I went into Power School to look up who is Marilyn Moran. Not a parent, not a contact. So if you're out there and listening, and you're probably not, thank you. If you get this message, feel free to give me a call so I can thank you in person. And then real quick, as I know it's getting late, just, inclement weather season is upon us. We have in the past utilized traditional snow days and remote days. We actually last year did not have a remote day. And the feedback that I continue to get from people is that they're not popular. And, I would welcome any direction from the board in terms of that. And so I don't want to take it off the table. It is something that we've used. But I can tell you there's been this evolution of, we said, I think 4 years ago, the first snow day will be a traditional snow day. And then we said, there was a progression of that to we won't have any remote days before December. And then even last year I said, we'll have 2 snow days. So I want to continue to sort of lean into the traditional snow day. I do think that that's the best approach. So we will continue to do that. Right now, if we end school on Wednesday, June 17th. So having 2 traditional snow days could put us at a Friday. Having additional snow days may necessitate a conversation through the superintendent between our associations and the board to extend. So I guess what I'm saying to the board is my plan is to lean into the traditional snow day, but if we had a winter where we were pummeled, then I think we have to have that tool at our disposal should we need it.
And I think that's
so
fair.
I welcome your thoughts. This is your chance to, if you have any passion about this topic either way, let me know.
Like you said, my approach would just be take it as it comes. I fully agree. Remote days are not favorable to parents, and we all find them a struggle. At least I do. So I think, like you said, if we can lean into the traditional snow days, great. If we need to reassess because we're getting crushed, then that's what we need to do.
I know, Pinkerton relies not exclusively, but largely on the remote days. But they're high school students. They're more independent. They can be left home alone, most of them. And so it's a little bit different of a model. I can remember during the pandemic times, I had a preschooler. Sitting a preschooler in front of a computer to engage in some academic work, it was like trying to get a cat to sit in front of a computer. So, we have to be sympathetic. And then the other piece that gets me every year, I have conversations with staff members who have young children at home, and they're being asked to teach while their young children have a traditional snow day. That is a burden that's very difficult. So just want to inform the board. In my next communication to families, I will sort of throw that out there that we're going to lean into the traditional snow day, but with remote days as a possibility if we needed to. So, and that's really it for the superintendent report, unless there's other questions or other items you'd like me to discuss.
Okay. Board members, anything else? All right. And at this point, I will make a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A3C, matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the public body itself. We are not going to come out of non-public. We're not going to come out of non-public. Correct. We have nothing to share when we come out of non-public. Any questions or discussion? Melissa, will you please take roll call?
Yes. Ms. Denton? Dr. Hebner? Yes. Mr. Cabarrus?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer? Yes. Dr. Poor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Time is
you, everyone.
9:26.